Want to get these episodes early? Head over to anchor.fm/Campfire Ashes or wherever you find your podcast to be able to check this out early before it hits YouTube. Hey, it's Paul.
Hey, it's Jess.
Welcome to Campfire Ashes. Now pull up a log. Let me tell you a story. She kicked her feet ahead, propelling herself forward. Her flowy, sun-dress trailed behind her as she threw her head back with the glee of a 10-year-old on the playground. And it wasn't even her swing. A pair were tied to a very large shade tree that was entirely too close to the corner to be safe for kids, but she didn't care. The crisp night air signaled the first hints of fall, and she wanted to celebrate. She was so in her head, she didn't even notice the guy that she kicked until after he hit the ground. He lost his footing and landed on his back, clearly not paying attention to himself, and she dug her heels into the dirt to slow herself down and hopped off the swing to see if he was okay. "Are you okay?" She quickly reached out to help him, and he sat up and tried to gather himself. He felt a little foolish going down so quickly, and he looked up, and he was caught off guard. Piercing blue eyes and the most disarming smile he had ever seen had greeted him. He quickly jumped up and dusted himself off, trying to do every motion as manly as he could. He beat the last bit of dust off his pants, never taking his eyes off her. Do they normally put swings this close to the sidewalk? And she sat back down on the swing, arms wrapped around the ropes, hands folded in front of her as she looked into the tree. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. She looked up at the nodding and started swinging again. "It's not my tree." He sat down on the swing next to her. "Are you in a habit of commandeering other people's trees?" And she felt a little embarrassed and turned her head. Well, no one was using it at the moment. She started to swing again. "You don't look familiar. Why are you on this street?" And he sighed deeply and started to swing himself. "No, I'm visiting a friend, and we were at a house party down the street, and I wanted to take a walk to clear my head." A lot on your mind?" Too much. I needed to get away." He kept his feet on the ground, but pushing himself back and forth as he thought what was going on. He looked up and saw her smiling at him, leaning her head against the ropes in the most endearing way that you could possibly think. They sat there for what felt like hours, and they offered each other their own personal tales of stress. Her job seemed like quotas were always needed to be kept at the risk of quality. Quantity was all that mattered. And his roommate was a nightmare, leading to the worst case of writer's block a new author could have. He couldn't tell if it was because of his inability to find the trash can, his 12-hour gaming sessions, screaming matches whenever a 10-year-old told him to get shit on, or his lack of boundaries, or every other facet of his life. He couldn't tell, but something had to give, and he was worried that it was going to be his sanity. And she listened intently, offering little insights, making him laugh, so much, in fact, that he didn't realize his feet were pushing the swing closer to hers. So life would be simpler without the roommate. "I'd love to, but I can't afford the apartment for long without him." His head started going over the quick math that he had clearly done before, thinking about his nightmare live-in. "If I could get rid of him and finish my book inside maybe 3 months, I could probably be able to handle it." "Get rid of him?" She playfully ran her fingers across her neck, hanging her tongue out of the mouth and crossing her eyes and tilting her head. No. Just that he would leave." "Got it. So I don't need to buy a bag of lime to help you out." No, that's kind of a last-ditch effort, so don't put him in a ditch either." He laughed out loud. "No, I just feel stuck." And they sat quietly for a little bit, and the conversation came back to what he wanted to do and what he hoped he could do. Her hand slipped down onto his as he listened intently. Words stopped whenever their eyes met. He wanted to lean in, but he felt too impulsive. He squeezed her hand and looked down at his feet, unsure what to do. "Okay, so here's the deal. When you get home, you're going to do what you need to do. Your roommate's going to take a hike. You're going to finish your book, become some big-time New York best-time seller, and then this time next year, you're going to come on a book tour with a stop in this town. We're going to meet again under this tree, and then we're going to pick up where we left off." And he's like, "Just like that?" "Yes, just like that." She smiled and grabbed his hand. "Deal?" "Deal." He felt a little bolder, and he mustered the courage to kind of lean in, and then she leaned in and kissed him. She looked down at the innocent smile and tucked her hair behind her ear. That's better than a handshake. They sat quietly for a little bit longer, holding his hand, and he got up and he straightened his clothes, and he wanted to stay longer, but he knew he had to get back. And her smile faded a little bit, knowing he had to go. "So this time next year, I'll see you right here." He smiled and he started back towards the party and wheeled around quickly. I don't even know your name. How am I going to sign a book to you next year if I don't even know? And her vibrant smile came back. It's Lucy. All right, see you in a year, Lucy. And he smiled and he kept looking back as he walked back to the party. Maybe he'd write about it. It felt like his creative juices were flowing just thinking about it. And Lucy sat back down, smiling as he faded from view. She started swinging again, carefree as ever, happy to think about their conversation. The year before them flashed in front of her eyes. He would go home after the weekend, the roommate would do something stupid and finally get kicked out. The new author would pen a wonderful love story about a chance encounter under a tree on the corner. The publishing company would set up a 10-city tour, and he would fight tooth and nail to make sure one of those stops was in a small town in Mississippi. He would already have his book signed out to Lucy, and he would head to that familiar tree on the crossroads where his life seemed to change. And he'd see that beautiful girl in a sundress on a swing. Their eyes would meet. He'd lean in for a kiss, and she would look into his eyes and pull his soul from his body as payment for his newfound fame. Work is work, after all, and she had a quota to meet. A deal struck is a deal, after all.